Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dennis Torres. I'm the Associate Director of Veteran Support Services at Queens College. It's our mission to assist student veterans, military personnel, and dependents in pursuing their academic careers and civilian careers at Queens College. It's a pleasure to have everyone here today. We have a very, very important guest speaker, financial literacy. It impacts all of us when it comes to financial savings, thinking long-term, how to deal with financial crisis due to the pandemic. This is such a critical aspect to everything and impacting a lot of aspects of our lives. So I'm really, really happy for today. And first, we'd like to start off the virtual event with a short video clip to give a sense of Queens College's student veteran community. I know a lot of times we can't visit the campus. I haven't been back on campus since March. So there's some students that have started their academic careers at Queens College and never really stepped on campus just yet. So I'd like to queue up a short video clip so we can get a feel of what the veterans community is really like. So without further ado.
With Air Force ROTC programs dating back to the 1950s and the 1960s, its military culture and history can be traced back to participation in World War II. Since the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, returning veterans have increased dramatically. Today, Queens College is home to over 200 veterans pursuing a myriad of different degrees in both undergraduate and graduate levels. Many of the college's veterans frequent our campus's lounge, each finding something beneficial to them.
Awesome. So happy. Welcome back. I always enjoy watching that and seeing, previous events and seeing past students. Next, I have the pleasure of introducing a fellow staff member that works in the office. For those of you that weren't aware, we do offer Prove, which is a program for current student veterans and military personnel that need to engage with a social work intern. You could talk about whatever you like when you speak to the interns, or just engage with other things, applications, guidance on how to maybe apply for grad school, or you just had some general questions. I do have the pleasure to introduce Peter Gay Bryant, who's two of our social work interns at Queens College. The floor is yours, Peter Gay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Gay, and I'm one of the social work interns, like Dennis said, working this year. And today our speaker is Rhonda Sherwin. She's an accredited financial counselor who also works to help bridge veterans with the gap between where they are now and where they want to be. She has a presentation for us today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat, or you can ask us to present your questions to Rhonda. So Rhonda, whenever you're ready, we're looking forward to your presentation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. This is my second year at Prove, and it's really a privilege for me to be part of the veterans community at Queens College. So I'll just go into a little bit of my background. I've been a veterans financial coach for 5 years. About 6 years ago, I was walked into my job one day at a fairly high-level investment firm, and I was out of a job. unexpected. Did not know what was coming. And just through chance, by answering an ad on LinkedIn for a financial coach, a veterans financial coach, I started, let's say, a second career for myself. And it's been really like a fascinating story. I was under a federal contract sponsored by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for 3 years. And after that contract ended, I now work with 2 nonprofits in the veterans community. Also, I'm working with the PROVE program. So that's my background. I think, looks like my camera, let me see, the camera is, I don't know, do you hear me or do you see me?
So we have some technical difficulties. I believe Rhonda may have cut out. Let's see here. I'm going to add. Okay. So let's see here until Rhonda's back up and running. Peter, I do know that you and the PROVE, you and Kate, both have recently had Film Fridays. Would you like to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, we had our first Film Friday last week, and we had a pretty good turnout. We watched Six Underground, and it's a movie on Netflix, so you can all watch it and come see us next week, Friday. Well, this Friday, actually, to talk about the film. We can keep watching, and we're also going to have the option for you guys to send us whatever you want us to watch. So every week we'll watch something different, and we can just talk about it. Bring your popcorn and your snacks, and come hang out with Kate and I.
Thank you. I think we're going to try to bring Rhonda back. She might be up and running again. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Rhonda, we can definitely hear you. So,
Okay,
oh, cut out again. No worries. All right, I guess while she gets, let's see if we can. So Rhonda, I think we still got you, right? You're back on.
I'm here. If you can hear me, I'll talk, but I don't know why it keeps on cutting out. I'm not worried so much about the camera, but if you can, I mean, I can talk through this as well, so that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know what happens with, I don't know if that stops the PowerPoint, but let me know if we can do the PowerPoint. We can.
Yeah, let's try to run to your. Let's open up the PowerPoint. I guess okay. Next we'll try to bring up the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to give just a summary of what I do with as a veterans financial coach. So if we can go, that's my contact information, and I'm sure Dennis, you'll represent that at the end of the talk. Mm-hmm. And so, can you please go to the next slide? Okay, so I'm going to call myself a financial liaison because I basically build the connection between financial education and the opportunity for you to make wise financial decisions. It's really giving you the empowerment to make those final decisions. So I basically, when I work with a client, my goal is to basically work myself out of a job because I want to equip you to make the decisions. In other words, to give you the tools and the education. And so this is just a summary of some of the topics that I cover: improving credit scores, reducing debt. I talk a lot about saving for retirement, savings for an emergency fund. There's a lot of interest now in building credit and also budgeting. I'm going to just list a couple of other things in addition to what you see on the screen, and this is in a little bit more detail. So I help people prepare personal budgets like financial planning to reduce, eliminate, or avoid debt. Teaching veterans and their families money management techniques, encouraging you to live within your means. Monitoring and establishing and protecting your credit. educating about retirement and also about emergency funds, which has gotten a lot of heightened attention in the view of COVID and people unprepared due to loss of work or changing in hours or just, life circumstances changing. I also teach about tax planning. I don't file taxes for people, but I do advise a little bit on how to get them, make the most of what you make in terms of how to do some planning strategies in that regard. And also, what's really important is how to find reliable information. It's a very complicated topic for many people. So many people didn't grow up in their families with financial education. And, we don't really learn it in schools. It's not really required in many schools. So maybe you get a course here and there, and then all of a sudden, you're in a life situation and you have to make a decision. So it's really important that you know where to find information as well. I'd like to also just talk about why, in terms of what I do, being a veterans financial coach. And that was really, how I started 5 years ago, in terms of what makes the difference between a veteran's financial coach and just like a financial advisor who, you may even know or meet in other areas. So I'm, for the past 5 years, I've been very active in learning and studying about military programs and benefits. And so I understand the language of the benefits that you have, the, both in terms of, housing allowance and, other, disability benefits, other things like that. I'm knowledgeable about the language unique to veterans issues. I mean, I've gotten some, military, cultural training, and just being with veterans constantly has really enabled me to understand your language. Veterans have more difficulty in transition due to coming from a structured environment and sort of like a tightly controlled world where many decisions are made for you, to one that is just like unstructured and uncertain. You come out from military and all of a sudden you're in the city of New York, and, you have to open, you have to find a bank, and you have to, get an apartment and find a job. And it's a very unstructured environment, but it's a much more difficult for veterans sometimes to transition to that. And I really understand that dynamic. And lastly, just the understanding that sometimes when you're in military, you are disconnected from the financial community. In other words, you get paid, but you're really not involved in many of the financial decisions that have to be made along the way. And I really understand that connection. I just wanted to highlight those differences between a veteran's financial coach and in terms of just an advisor or someone that may not be as comfortable or familiar with the, with the veterans' lifestyle and transition issues. I'd like to also, during this talk, I have 3 topics that seem to be very, very prominent when I talk to veterans. And I can't cover them all in a lot of detail, but the 3 topics that I hear about the most are credit, and that's a big topic: credit cards, building credit, credit scores, investing, because I know some of you are interested in doing that. And also, which is a timely topic, and I'm getting a lot of questions about that, is the current environment in terms of stimulus payments and unemployment income, and a little bit of taxes, because we're in that mode. If we could just go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just I like this slide because, coaching is the center of the wheel. And, I always say that I just don't only work with money. As a matter of fact, money is only half of it. It's really working with people. And that's what the difference is with a coach as well. All these elements that you see on the screen, supporting and accountability and mentoring, that's all part of the coaching dynamic. And I think that's what also makes someone like me and financial coaches stand apart than, let's say, an advisor who may be working at a prominent brokerage firm. And they do their share of advising, but what I do is just a little bit more of the people aspect of it. And I think, and that's what my training is. So as an accredited financial counselor, you learn the financial information, but it's just more than delivering information. It's really understanding somebody, where they are, what their background is, and, sort of allowing me to stand in your shoes. I really pride myself in not being judgmental and being objective. My tagline is not why you are where you are, but like, how do we move forward? It's really about making those steps to move forward and to, get better and do better. And we all can. Next slide, please. Okay, so this one is just a little interesting because it's really, I'm a big, sports fan, and I find a lot of sort of common ground between like coaching in terms of financial coaching and looking at sports. But this one is really interesting, and I like this one, and it's, it's obviously a graphic, but it shows you like there's all different strategies in terms of like trying to improve your financial behavior, trying to, make better decisions. And that's what coaches do. It's like a zigzag, pattern in terms of it's not straight up, it's not straight down. It's, we'll go through some zigzags and we'll come up with different plays. And if something happens, you have to like sort of adapt. That's what a game is. If something happens in a game, you have to sort of like bounce back and sort of figure out what to do next. And I think this is just a graphic where it's more circular, it's more interactive. It's not like one step, next step, next step, next step. It's sometimes not even always logical, right? But it does, that's what, when we're talking about working with humans, that's usually the way it happens. So I just wanted to just show you that, when you go to a financial planner, it's like, they have a plan and it's step 1 through 5. Doesn't really work that way. We have a process, but the process is circular and it's interactive. And sometimes you go backwards, and then we'll make 1 step back and 2 steps forward. And that's how I work with clients. So I did want to go through if we can go to the next slide, and I'll just finish this presentation, and then I'm going to talk about the topics that I mentioned, just so you get a sort of a flavor for the credit investing and the timely topics like stimulus payment and taxes. So I'm happy to work with anybody one-to-one. I mean, that's my preferable method. I do group work as well, but one-to-one. So I encourage anybody that's watching this presentation, you have my contact information. That's part of the PROVE program, that I am available to work with clients one-to-one, because all of you have different goals. You have a different background. There's no one set goal for, just because you're a certain age or a certain point in your life. So that's really very important to know that I look at each person individually as a person that may not be standing next to the same, that is standing next to the same person. Your goals can be completely different. It's very personalized wherever you are in the journey. There are some people that are ready to buy a house. There are some people that never want to buy a house. There are others that are starting to save for retirement. Some people have no savings. So it's really to understand where you are on your journey and to meet you at that point. And also just knowing that you're working with someone who's trained and certified, that's really important. I mean, the word coaching sort of has been diluted in a lot of, the news lately. Everybody is calling them, he or she, a coach. I think it's really important to be with someone who's trained. I'm an accredited financial counselor, and, I have an MBA from NYU. I mean, I pride myself on my education, and I also think that part of my job, by being part of PROVE and other organizations, is to keep up with the things that are going on in the news, so that I can sort of be that information, liaison to you. In other words, so I'm here to like help you learn, and if I know something, I want to spread the word. So that's where the training and being a professional comes in. So I don't have a presentation. I promised myself I would keep this down to a minimum number of slides because I didn't want to overwhelm all of you with slides. So I'm just going to go through some of the topics that I know, as I mentioned earlier, that are, get a lot of attention, and I get a lot of queries. So let's start. The first one is credit cards. The two biggest parts of credit cards are your credit report and your credit score. They're different. So if you go to annualcreditreport.com, that's your credit report. So think of the credit report as a report card. Your score is like your grade, okay? When you go to your credit report, you will not see your grade. But you will see all the, your past credit card debts, or if you've paid up, you'll get a very good story of what your credit looks like. I encourage all of you to look at your credit report. It's free. As a matter of fact, from now until I think the end of April, you can basically get a free report every week. Probably don't need that, but it's really a good idea to eliminate. To look up your credit report. Your credit score is also, an important number. It's sort of the common number amongst, it's sort of like the SAT score of your credit, right? In other words, everybody has a credit score. And so if you're applying for credit, credit card, that is sort of the, the number that is going to be very important in terms of determining whether you are going to be accepted for that card. It's also a driver for, looking for an apartment. A lot of landlords are looking at credit scores now, and they're allowed to, by the way. So that also matters. Or if you want to borrow money and, get a mortgage, I know a lot of veterans are very interested in the home loan program. The score will matter there too. What makes up most of your score? Two things make up 70% of your score: your payment history and the amount of credit that you have outstanding. So your payment history, are you making your payments? Are you paying on time? And in terms of, and again, I'm just summarizing, and with any of you, I can get into more detail. But the other 35%, it's about 35% each. So together, what I'm telling you is about 70% of your score. In other words, how much credit are you using? If you have, a $10,000 credit line combined with all your cards, and you're using, $7,000 or $8,000, that means you're using a lot of credit. That will lower your score. If you have a $10,000 availability, or $5,000, whatever the amount is, and you're using a small amount, let's say $1,000, then you have available, you're not using all your credit. And if you are using it, you're paying it down. In other words, don't think about it this way. If you have available credit and you're making small payments, then your available balance is less. Those two things are very, 70% of your score. Other things that come up are, how often you're applying for credit cards, much less of a percentage. The type of credit you have, like if you have installment loans and credit cards and, car loans. I mean, the mixture is helpful. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a driver necessarily in moving, a great deal of points, but it can be a factor. But I would emphasize the two of your payment history and the amount of credit you have. So people ask me, how do I build credit? I get veterans that they're just not used to having credit card. They never really they're afraid of credit. And, by the way, credit, I understand that. I really do understand that, because you're afraid that if I have a credit card, I'm going to spend and I won't be able to pay it off. But the issue now in this society, in this financial world, it's really important that you build credit, because think about this. If you go, and people, when I explain this, it's sort of like eye-opening. If there are two people looking for an apartment, right? Let's look at something very practical. Two people looking for an apartment. One has a pretty good credit score. One has no credit. So you would think, well, the person with no credit is definitely better, or even better than someone with like an average credit score, not even good. But the problem is the person with no credit, we don't know which direction that person's going to go. When I say we, the creditor, the landlord, okay? We don't know which way that person's going to go. In other words, that person could be a great risk or it could be a very poor credit risk. So it's the unknown that really ends up being a negative. And that's why I always encourage, even when if you want to buy a house, and I'm going to be very specific with the VA home loan program. If you have no credit, it's not necessarily a benefit because it's the unknown. I'm going to emphasize that again. So one asks me, well, how do you build credit? Like, how do I get started? Never had a credit card. What do I do? I'm going to give you a couple of things. I'm going through this fairly quickly, so I apologize. I'll be happy to talk with anyone, but I do get this question a lot, so I feel I want to answer. How do I build my credit? So you can get a secured credit card. That means you make a deposit at a bank. The point is, with this kind of credit card, unlike most credit cards where there's no security or collateral, let's say if you buy a house, you have the house as collateral. If you buy a car, you have the car loan. But with credit cards, there's no collateral. You can't go back and get what you bought, with the food you ate in a restaurant, right? So there's no collateral. That's why the rates are so high on credit cards when you don't pay on time, or when you pay them out. So a secured credit card, the bank is going to take a little bit of a risk. They're going to say, give me a deposit, we'll put it in the bank, and you can use it. But if you don't pay, then we have the collateral. So it's really just a way of saying that we can give you collateral while you're building up your credit. That's one way. You can become an authorized user on somebody you know. In other words, if someone you know has very good credit, ask to be an authorized user. Because if that credit demonstrates good behavior, you'll be part of that as well. You can go for something called credit builder loans. Excuse me. This is a loan where they're usually offered by credit unions and smaller banks, but it's a loan where you take out, you ask, they actually will offer you a loan, you pay it back over time. And usually about a year or so. And then at the end of the loan, you can draw out the cash and the interest. But it's just a way to say, I need a loan, small amount. And, I want to just demonstrate how I can demonstrate good behavior. Another option is, and this is fairly new, but it's called Experian, which is one of the credit reporting agencies. They have what is called a boost program. So a boost program is, let's say you're paying your cable bill on time, your phone bill on time, your utilities bill on time. That's good credit, right? You get no reward for that on your credit report because it's not a credit card. It's not really credit, but you've been a good payer. You can import that to Experian Boost, where you can have a link to your bank account showing good payments on your utilities and phone and cable. And that will also improve your credit score, probably about 20 to 30 points. And it could be more. And that's something that just started a couple of years ago. Not a lot of people know about it, but it's called Experian Boost. Again, we want to try and get people into, more of a positive reporting history. The other thing is, if you've been paying your rent on time and you've been a responsible, renter, you can ask your landlord if they cooperate. Not all of them do, but some are starting to do this. You can have your landlord report your rental payments, your on-time rental payments to the reporting agencies. So that's, again, not a lot of people know about that, but that's another way, because that's another way to show that you're a responsible payer. So those are the things that I wanted to point out. I'm happy to discuss any of these in more detail with all of you. So my next topic is investing. And there are three, if you walk away with anything from this presentation, three components of investing. What's your target? What am I investing for? Okay, what's my target? And I'll go through that. What's my time frame? And what's my risk tolerance? anytime you invest in something, time, the target, time, and tolerance. So the target, what are you saving for? Are you saving for retirement? That's much longer term. Are you saving to buy a house in 2 years, 5 years? Are you saving to buy, a new like TV that you can buy like in a store, like something that's not, a big ticket item, but you want to save. You want to save for a vacation. Again, that's an investment in terms of putting money away. So what's your target? Identify what your target is. Your time. How long do you have? If it's retirement, you obviously have a lot longer. If it's something that you want to, if you want to buy a house in 2 years, that's a shorter term. If you're saving for college for children, you have to so it's always good to have a time frame of how much you need, of what you're saving for. And the last one, which is probably the most important, is, and this is what makes people really different, is the tolerance. How much risk are you willing to take? Some people want to take like no risk, okay? The dollar I put in is the dollar I want out. And some things that you're saving for, you can take a risk. If you're saving for an emergency fund, that you want to have emergency funds, you really don't want to take a lot of risk with that, because you'll be able to, if you need, if you're going to be investing in the market or investing in things that may not stabilize in terms of value, the dollar you put in may not be the dollar you take out. So you really have to think about, do I want to sleep at night and not worry about my investments? Do I have a longer time frame with retirement? I don't need it for 20 years. So if the market, well, look at the market the way it's been in the past couple of days. Up 500, down 500, up 100. Some people don't want to go through that. So really, those are the three different items: target, time, and tolerance. And everybody's different. And as I go back to my original presentation, when I started this, I acknowledge that there's a difference with everybody. You can't force someone to be more, adverse to risk, or more, sort of like want people to take a higher risk. But when you're thinking about longer term investing, you have to realize that over the longer term, the markets, the stock market, has always proven to produce higher returns than just, stabilized the money market. Okay, and so the last topic, and I'm open to questions, and I'd be happy to, I'm seeing something. I did want to talk about one thing with investment, because this, I have been talking to a lot of students lately, and this is the whole, the Robinhood and, some of these apps that allow you to, invest. I know a lot of people are like interested in that. So here's my take on that. And I'm a very objective person. I get it. I love Robinhood for this reason, because it's introducing people into the financial community. So I love it for that. Okay. It's a way to get you interested in watching the markets. It's a way to sort of watch different stocks that you like. It's very good from that. But you have to measure it in terms of is this money that I really need? Because it can be risky. The other thing is, if you're investing in individual stocks, you're putting a lot of risk on those individual stocks, as opposed to going into a mutual fund where there's a wide menu of stocks and you're just buying shares in a fund. So you have to be the market fluctuates, as you know. I think Robinhood is not, let's say, in terms of my target time and tolerance, it's for those that can have a higher risk tolerance, okay? Because it's great when the market's going up, but the markets are cyclical and you have to kind of live with that. But I think it's if you go into it with a measured approach, this is money that I can lose, then it's okay. But if you're going into it that I'm going to make it because I need a down payment on my house in 2 years, I wouldn't, because you're putting too much risk probably on a couple of stocks. Most people go into Robinhood following a few stocks. Oh, my friend told me about this tech stock. It's a high flyer. It's going to be amazing. And it may be, but it may not. So I think you really have to go into it with your eyes wide open, but I love it because it's getting people much more interested in the markets. But it's not like a video game, it's like it's money. So, if you lose a game, like, okay, you walk away, but like this is your money, and you just have to like sort of put it into perspective. Okay. It's not, I know it's not like hardcore gambling. I mean, you're putting thought into what you're buying, but just make sure it's in the context of like, this is money I can lose. And the other way to think about it is if you've made money on those apps, like use your earnings, use what you made and put it into an emergency fund. Like take away your profits and say, I started with 1,000. I'm going to keep the 1,000. Anything above it, I'm going to take it out and put it into into another fund. Now, don't forget also with Robinhood, unless you're using retirement funds, there's capital gains and there's, so all your income is not all profit, right? Because you have to pay taxes on your, on your earnings. So just keep that in mind. If you make $1,000, it's not all going to be in your pocket. There's going to be some capital gains taxes. They may be short term, maybe long term, depending on how long you've held the stock, but there are issues like that too. Okay. I can take questions. I just wanted to talk one more thing about stimulus payment and unemployment income, that kind of thing, because I know that's very common. So let's talk about that for a minute. Now, during this past year, because of this awful situation with pandemic, there's been stimulus payments that were offered, that were given to us for most people in March, and then at the end of the year, probably, I think it was like I think there were 2 in 2020. And so if for some reason you were entitled to a stimulus payment and you did not get it, whether it's the first one or the second one, the only way to get it is to file a tax return for 2020. Okay. Even if you don't have to file, like if your income is low enough or all your income is tax free, you have to file it in order to get the stimulus. We're calling it a recovery rebate. And so I have many clients, particularly in the nonprofits that I work with, veterans on the verge of homelessness, or they never had to file because all their benefits are tax-free. And for one reason or another, we don't, sometimes we know why, sometimes we don't. He or she did not get a stimulus payment. You have to file a tax return to get it. Now, that said, there is free tax filing from the IRS. Anyone earning under $68,000, you can go to irs.gov and get free tax filing. I can send the link in a separate, Pettigay, I can send you the link that you can post it, okay? These are very two important programs because many people, if you want to file taxes, it could be expensive, but it's free if you're under $68,000 as an individual.
Okay.
So that's what I would like to just emphasize, that with the stimulus payment. Most people are entitled to 2. There's some exceptions. If you're a dependent on somebody else's tax return, no, you can't get a stimulus payment. And I think you do also need a valid Social Security number, but most of the time you are entitled to stimulus. Okay. And I'd like to make sure that everybody gets that.
Okay. Thank you for that. And there's some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
One specifically, Barbie Pive, she asks, how does co-signing affect person's credit? So co-signing with someone, how does that impact your credit?
Okay, so co-signing, I'm going to interpret that in 2 different ways. Co-signing alone, like if you borrow money and somebody is along with you, then both of you are responsible. And so if that loan is not paid, all of you are going to go down. Okay, that's just the way it works because you're all participating in it. And how many other, if it's co-signing, if it's 2 people, you're all going to go down. Same thing with the credit card, as I was mentioning earlier. If the credit card does not perform well in terms of late payments and non-payments and, just sort of, negative behavior, both of you are going to, suffer from that. So you have to be really careful when you co-sign a loan, because you're taking on the responsibility of the person that you're co-signing with.
Okay. Thank you for that. Another question that I have, I work with a couple of students who are thinking about starting their own businesses, small businesses. And, I feel like in doing so, I think financial coaching is very important. Again, you're investing your money like you mentioned before. So do you have any advice for people who are looking to start their small business, veterans specifically? Are there any resources that's available to them if they want to invest or start a business?
Well, I do know I started my own business as well. I have a small business, and I found there are a couple of programs in the city agencies. I think it's the small business. I'm like a minority women business owner. I think it's the group. Maybe it's SBS. I think NYC.
Small Business Association.
Yeah. They have a lot of, and all of their programs are free. I mean, you really rarely pay for anything. I mean, once in a while they'll have a seminar with a guest speaker and they charge, but I found them to be very helpful in terms of some of their programs. I'll tell you the cost of starting up a small business. It depends on if in terms of what I did, I don't have any product. In other words, I'm not selling any, materials. I'm not selling any cosmetic products or bakery products, that kind of thing. I'm selling like a service. So my startup was limited because I don't have any production. But the startups, basically, the legal fees of getting, things organized, that's what I found to be the most costly. There's like some annual filing requirements. So it's really depending on what type of business you're starting, but it would encourage you to use a lot of the government resources. I mean, they're especially, again, as a minority women business owner, they've been really helpful. And there's some loan programs and some guidance with that as well. So I think there's really been a push to encourage more people to do that. It's still really important to know about some of the basics that I've talked about in terms of credit, in terms of investing. I didn't talk too much about this, but budgeting in terms of, staying within your means and having a budgeting plan. I also offer to my clients or anybody, I have sort of budgeting sort of worksheets. Okay. One of my favorites is Excel, where you just populate the numbers and it's all calculated for you. And I'd be happy to share that as well.
Thank you so much for that. And, with the pandemic and everything going on, I feel like people, and I've seen friends of mine and other individuals who are looking to buy homes, or they're thinking like now is a good time to buy a house or to buy a car. And with that being said, there's another question. Are there programs for first-time home buyers to pay less than the standard 20% down payment?
That I don't know because I haven't seen any of those. I do know with the VA home loan program, there is no down payment. So if you're a veteran, then the VA home loan program, that's one of the nice features. But I don't know about the 20% down. There may be, and that's really a bank-to-bank thing. In other words, there's no program that I'm familiar with that offers that. I mean, the banks make up their own sort of guidelines. But when you're talking about getting a mortgage, you really should start looking at your credit report and your credit score, because you can't, decide in, let's say, March that I want to buy a house in June, right? Because if your credit isn't there, it's going to take more than 3 months to build it up. This is something that you need to plan probably about 9 months to a year to get your credit in very good shape, so that when you apply for that mortgage, you get a good rate. Rates are determined by your credit. So that's an important thing. They will, if your credit is sort of questionable, you're going to pay a higher rate, which will cost you a lot more money on your house in the long run, right? The price of the house, not so much, but the financing of the house will cost you more. So it's a really good idea if you're thinking about home buying to get started on making, on building your credit, making sure your credit's in a really good place. And I would say 9 months to a year is a perfect time. If you have less time, do the best you can. Do the very best you can. Start making those payments on time. Don't miss any payments. Start paying down your credit so you have more available in terms of what I'd spoken about credit availability. How much credit am I using? Start to pay that down. As those balances come down, and you don't add to it, obviously, your credit score is going to look a lot better. I know we don't like to be dictated by credit scores, but to be honest, it's just for now, it's the common denominator that we all live with. That's sort of just a fact of life. So I can't fight it. We have to learn how to use it to the best of our advantage.
Thank you so much. And with that being said, having a house and a car, all of that, assets versus liabilities, another question that's coming from Barbie is there any good resource to learn about assets versus liabilities, or do you have any, like a quick insight on assets versus liability?
Yeah, so assets are like, just for the rest of the audience, assets are like what you own and liabilities are what you owe. But I'm going to probably tell you something maybe different. I have no problem, if you own a house and you owe on the house, that may say, well, my house is, worth whatever, a certain amount, and I owe money on a house. Like, it's okay to owe money. Like, it's nothing wrong with owing money, because most people don't buy a house for cash. The idea is you want your assets to increase in value. Like, you want to buy a house that's going to go up in value, so if you ever sell the house, you can make money on it. But there's nothing wrong with a liability in terms of a mortgage, which it would be, right, to finance a house. You're better off financing a house than paying all cash, because then all your cash is gone and you can't really improve the house if you have to if you have to add something in terms of maintenance, and your money is tied up in a house. That way you can use your money for other things. So when I think of a liability, like a car loan, most people don't pay for it. They own a car, that's the asset. The liability is the loan.
Right.
I mean, most people, you need to pay off a car. And sometimes you can even lease a car if you don't want to own it. So the point is, I don't get too caught up in terms of what I own versus what I owe. I think it's more of like what I'm owning, what I'm owning and sort of what I owe. If you're borrowing money to buy, sort of to live off credit cards or for the wrong reason, that's a liability that you probably, need to work on, right? Because there's no asset there. There's nothing you own. You're just paying off credit card and you're borrowing money to pay off credit card.
That makes sense. Another question that I feel like a lot of people are having right now, it's like with the student loans. I know that for students who take out loans for this school year, there's no interest added on to that loan. So do you recommend that students still try to make payments towards it even though there's no interest, or should they wait the 6 months? Do you think that impacts their credit? And if so, in any way?
Well, there has been a sort of a stay on all student loans in terms of, and I think it was just extended actually till September, if I'm not mistaken. And these are federal student loans. I just want to emphasize that because there are private student loans as well. Yeah, so for federal student loans, in other words, by the way, that's another reason why you should check your credit report. You want to make sure that you're not being reported negatively for not paying your student loan if in fact you have not paid it. You would be surprised. There are about 12 student loan servicing agents, and they may not all be that accurate, and so that's really important because you should not be penalized. That said, if these loans aren't going away, there's been like a stay on the loan, but they haven't been forgiven. Okay, so if you can pay, then you're really paying, and I don't think the interest is not being accrued either. So whatever payments you can make towards your student loans, you're paying down your loan, which is a good thing. So if you have the ability to pay off the loan, then it's a good idea to pay whatever you can during this time period where you don't have to, but it's a good idea to do that. Don't forget, forgiveness means the loan goes away. Forbearance, whatever, means like the loan is still there, but we're giving you a break. And the break has been now for probably, I think it started in the summer. So it's going to be about a year. You should not be penalized for not paying anything. Student loans is a federal obligation. If it's a federal loan, they do not go off your credit report. They follow you. If you stop paying, the creditors will know, because they don't, sometimes, credit card debt, whatever, that falls off after 7 years. But student loans don't fall off. They follow you. So whatever, and there's different approaches to student loans. If you in a bad situation with your student loan, you can get back on track. There's income-based repayment. There's working out arrangements with the student loan provider. I mean, there's ways to sort of get back on track so your credit doesn't get negatively affected. That's another credit repair type of activity that I encourage people to do if they're in that situation.
Okay, thank you for that. And just one last question. The student of mine who's looking towards starting his own business, is that also coaching that you do encourage people to contact you for? Do you offer those services as well to help them start up the business since you've done it before?
Well, I've done it, so I can just, give anybody like a lessons learned. I'm not, I can talk in terms about just general financial issues, and I've started when I've made mistakes, and so I've had some good successes, and I've had good, some mistakes. I have a partner, so that was another interesting dynamic. So I'm working with someone else, and so we have like a partnership type of entity established. I had to go through, I had a name, and then my name wasn't validated, and I had to go through a trademark attorney to get my name trademarked. So I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've learned that too. So that's another interesting thing. Be careful of what you name your business. You have to make sure that name isn't being used. And I had the word, I'll give you everyone just a brief thing. I had the word financial in my name. Okay. And I didn't know that it meant it, that was part of the name. Well, what I found out is that you have to get a special permission to have certain words in your name from like the Department of State, because those names could mean that I'm giving financial advice, meaning like, buy this or sell this. I'm not, but that was, so there's like all these nuances that come up that people aren't aware of. So I'd be happy to discuss that and also give some of the resources that I used to help me. I didn't go about it alone. I tapped into most of them free, of learning different things about how I want to set up the business and all the other parts of it. So I'd be happy to share that. I only mentioned one agency, but there are others as well.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. So I think, Rhonda, we're actually going to wind down and keep timing. But I'd love to, leave you with the last word. If you have any advice you'd like to give to, student veterans that are exiting service members exiting the military and transitioning to student veteran status, what advice would you give them?
Don't go it alone. Okay, you're not in this alone. You have to really seek out, professionals in terms of accountants, attorneys, financial coaches or advisors, people that that can really help you. It's like and I've used this phrase and I have a whole presentation on this, you're your own CEO. You're the CEO of you, okay? So CEOs always tap into experts. They don't do it alone. They have a team. So it's team you. And I just want to emphasize, don't feel you're in, you're in uncharted territories and how do I handle this? You really have to seek out people. Now that's easier said than done, seeking out the right people. That's true. So you have to really do your homework on that. But don't feel that you have to go on any of these decisions. You don't feel that you have to go it alone. I'm one resource, but there's many other people that are really, very strong out there. If you go to someone that's, going to buy, that's going to try and sell you things, well, all of you are very astute and know what the difference is between that. But just get some really good advice from the experts. That's what I did.
That makes sense. You got to know your numbers. You have to know your credit score. You should know your credit lines and all that stuff.
Pedigay, could you just put annual credit report, all one word.com? That's the free site to get your credit report. Perfect. If somebody could post that, or I can give it to you later, Dennis.
Yeah, we'll post it in the comments. That makes complete sense. And I know initially you had mentioned there's some emergency grants out there. I just wanted to mention that Queens College does offer a Queens College Emergency Relief Fund. There's a Petrie Emergency Grant Fund as well. If anyone has any questions about that, you could always just Google or reach out to us directly. Our approved interns are well versed with that process and can help refer directly to access those funds. So
Good.
No, perfect. Thank you so much, Rhonda. I just want to thank you again for your time, your expertise, this invaluable resources. I really identified with your slide that showed, the soccer pitch with all the different arrows. I feel as if I definitely identify with that. After my second deployment in Iraq, I was introduced to kind of like day trading through E-Trade, and it's up, down. At one point, you just have to put it on the back burner and not think about it. So I definitely did appreciate that. Yeah. Now I'm just like,
it's just it's so enticing because when you win, it's so attractive. But it's you have to really understand the risk. So again, I love those apps, but just put it into the right context, which you learned your lesson as well, and I have too.
Exactly. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you so much. And Dennis, if there's an opportunity that there's a hot topic that what I would like to do is I'll send you something. Like I have a nice write up about taxes, and I do want to send you the filing. If you want to, I have like a 1-page flyer. It's like a 1-pager, a lot of good information that will show the free tax filing. That's a big thing. I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that. I'm going to send that to you if you want to post it wherever on feel free to use it.
We'll do. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye. This marks the formal conclusion of our event. All tuning in again. This Friday, there's Film Fridays with our approved interns. Feel free to jump on that. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a LinkedIn group. Please reach out, connect. Everyone, stay safe and be well. Thank you so much.